Unanswered messages became the most terrifying night of my life and taught me that sometimes the person on the other end of your phone isn't who you think they are. Instagram was my obsession during the scorching summer of 2018 when I had just turned 16. Living in Cedar Heights, a quiet suburb outside Portland, I spent countless hours exchanging stories and messages with friends. One friend in particular, whom I'll call Philip, was a constant presence in my DMs. We were practically glued to each other's close friends lists, sharing everything from random thoughts to inside jokes. The Thompson Manor Apartments, where I lived with my parents on the 3rd floor, had become my digital fortress. My bedroom window faced the courtyard, and I never gave much thought to privacy until that night changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening in late July when I noticed Philip hadn't responded to my stories in hours. This was unusual. He typically replied within minutes. Concerned, I sent him a funny selfie I'd taken at Riverside Mall earlier that day. The message showed as delivered, but no response came. Growing increasingly puzzled, I decided to send another photo, this time a ridiculous face I was making while eating pizza. Still nothing. When I saw that he'd finally opened both messages, I expected the usual flood of laughing emojis or a witty comeback. Instead, silence stretched on. "Hey, everything okay?" I typed, switching to regular text messages. The blue check marks appeared almost immediately, but no reply followed. Something felt wrong, but I wasn't about to beg for attention. I set my phone aside and tried to focus on a Netflix series, though an uncomfortable feeling gnawed at me. Hours later, while texting my friend Sarah about weekend plans, Philip's name came up in conversation. That's when Sarah dropped a bombshell. "Oh, didn't you know? Philip lost his phone yesterday at Ocean View Beach. He's been freaking out about it all day." My blood ran cold. "Are you absolutely sure?" I pressed, my fingers trembling as I typed. "Positive. I was with him when he realized it was gone. He's been using his sister's phone to contact people." I immediately called the landline at the Rodriguez house where Philip lived. His mother answered, and when I asked to speak with him, Philip himself confirmed my worst fears. His phone had been missing since the previous afternoon. "Philip," I said, my voice barely steady, "someone has your phone. They've been opening my messages and reading everything." The panic in his voice was immediate. "You need to come over right now," he insisted. But something deep in my gut told me that was the last thing I should do. Instead of visiting Philip, I decided to confront whoever had his phone directly. I sent a series of text messages. "Return the phone. We know you have it. This isn't funny." Every message showed as delivered, but the responses I received made my skin crawl. Instead of texts, I got an Instagram story from Philip's account. My hands shook as I opened it. The image that filled my screen will haunt me forever. A man with an unnaturally wide grin, his eyes seeming to bore directly through the camera. The caption read, "Coming to visit." I immediately called Philip again. "Please tell me you don't have our addresses saved in your phone," I begged, though I already knew the answer. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I have both yours and Sarah's addresses in my contacts, and my location services were turned on." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from the stranger. "You look even better in person." My blood turned to ice. Philip didn't have Find My iPhone enabled, so there was no way to track this person remotely. We were completely at this predator's mercy. That night, I jolted awake in the suffocating darkness of my room. The digital clock glowed an ominous 2:47 a.m. Something had torn me from sleep, a sound, a movement, perhaps just pure instinct screaming that danger was near. The air in my room felt thick and oppressive, despite the air conditioning humming steadily. As I sat up, rubbing my eyes and trying to orient myself, I could have sworn I'd seen a brief flash of light just as consciousness returned. Then, without warning, a brilliant white light flooded my bedroom. The flash was so intense it felt like needles piercing my dark-adjusted eyes. I squeezed them shut, seeing spots and feeling a sharp, burning pain. When I finally managed to force them open again, my heart stopped. My window, which I knew I had locked before bed, was wide open. A figure was climbing through it, half his body already inside my room, a camera clutched in his hands. The scream that tore from my throat didn't sound human. It was pure, primal terror as I recognized the face from the Instagram story, that same disturbing grin, now mere feet from my bed. I scrambled backward against my headboard, pulling my knees to my chest as the man struggled to fully enter through the window frame. For what felt like an eternity but was probably only seconds, we stared at each other. His eyes held a sick satisfaction, as if this moment was exactly what he'd been hoping for. The camera in his hands caught the moonlight, and I realized he'd been photographing me while I slept. My screaming finally roused my parents. The sound of their bedroom door slamming open and footsteps pounding down the hallway seemed to snap the intruder back to reality. He twisted around, fighting to squeeze back through the window frame, his movements panicked and clumsy. By the time my father burst into my room, the man had vanished into the night, leaving only the open window and my traumatized sobbing as evidence of what had occurred. The police arrived within minutes of our 911 call. Using the phone's GPS data and cell tower information, they tracked the device to a rundown house in the Millbrook district, about 3 miles from Thompson Manor. They found the perpetrator, a 34-year-old man with a history of stalking charges, still in possession of Philip's phone. The camera contained dozens of photos, pictures of me sleeping, images of our apartment building, and screenshots of private conversations he'd been monitoring for days. The evidence was overwhelming. Philip got his phone back the next morning, but it took weeks before I could sleep without checking and double-checking my window locks. The man was sentenced to 5 years in prison for breaking and entering, stalking, and invasion of privacy. This experience taught me that our digital lives and physical safety are more connected than we ever imagine. A lost phone, a social media account, a saved address, these seemingly innocent pieces of information can become weapons in the wrong hands. Now, years later, I'm more careful about what I share online and who I trust with my personal information. But mostly, I'm grateful that my instincts kept me from going to Philip S. house that night, and that my screams were loud enough to scare away a predator who had been watching and waiting in the shadows. Some nightmares, it turns out, are very real and they're closer than you think. Sometimes the most terrifying moments happen when you're just trying to connect with someone you care about. What started as innocent late-night messages turned into a nightmare that still haunts me today. I was 15 at the time, navigating the awkward maze of freshman year at Riverside High School. Like most teenagers, I spent countless hours on social media, but this particular evening in October would prove to be unlike any other. Karina, a girl from my chemistry class who had recently started sending me photos through our messaging app, was about to unknowingly involve me in something that would shake us both to our core. The autumn wind rattled my bedroom windows as I settled in to watch Netflix around 9 p.m. My phone buzzed with a notification from Karina, a selfie of her lying comfortably in her bed at her family's house on Maple Grove Avenue. No caption, just her warm smile against the backdrop of her cozy bedroom with its pale blue walls and movie posters. "Hey, what's going on?" I typed back, genuinely curious about her evening. Her response came quickly. Another nearly identical photo, this time captioned, "Nothing much, just relaxing. You?" She had set the viewing timer to 12 seconds, giving me ample time to take in the image. As I studied her face, something in the background caught my attention, a dark, unfamiliar silhouette near her bedroom window. My pulse quickened as I stared at the screen. The figure was subtle, almost easy to miss, but unmistakably human in shape. It stood motionless against the glass, like a statue frozen in time. "Is that your dad by the window?" I messaged her, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. Her reply arrived moments later. Another selfie, identical angle, and identical pose. "What do you mean?" the caption read. But this time, my blood ran cold. The shadow had moved closer to the glass, and I could now make out the distinct outline of a palm pressed flat against the window pane. My fingers flew across the keyboard before the image even disappeared. "Karina, there's someone at your window behind you. Turn around now." She opened my message almost instantly. The familiar open notification appeared beneath my warning, but then nothing. Complete silence. Minutes scrolled by like hours. I sent message after message, each one more frantic than the last. My calls went straight to voicemail. The digital void where her responses should have been felt like a growing chasm of dread. I found myself pacing my room, checking my phone every few seconds, willing it to buzz with her reply. I didn't have her parents' contact information, and the helplessness was suffocating. All I could do was wait and imagine the worst-case scenarios playing out in my mind like a horror movie on repeat. It wasn't until nearly 2 a.m. that my phone finally vibrated with her response. My hands shook as I opened her message, preparing myself for whatever revelation awaited. Karina's text painted a terrifying picture. The moment she had turned around after reading my warning, she found herself face to face with a 26-year-old man peering through her window. Her scream pierced the night air, startling the intruder, who immediately pried open the unlocked window and climbed into her room. She bolted down the hallway to her parents' bedroom, waking her father in a panic. When they returned to her room moments later, they found nothing but an empty space and a window swaying open in the October breeze. The stranger had vanished into the darkness as quickly as he had appeared. Though this wasn't my direct experience, the incident left an indelible mark on my psyche. The realization that I had unknowingly become a digital guardian angel that night, that my casual observation of background details in a simple selfie had potentially prevented something horrific, still gives me chills. Karina later learned from police that there had been several reports of a suspicious man lurking around the Maple Grove neighborhood that month. What terrifies me most is knowing that without the accidental visibility provided by those innocent photos, the prowler might have remained completely undetected until it was too late. The whole experience taught me that danger can lurk in the most unexpected places, and sometimes salvation comes from the most unlikely sources. Even something as simple as a friend paying attention to the details in a late-night selfie. To this day, I can't help but wonder what might have happened if I hadn't been looking so closely at that screen, if I hadn't noticed that ominous shadow creeping closer to her window with each passing message. Have you ever received a message from a complete stranger who somehow knows exactly where you live? What started as an ordinary Tuesday night scrolling through social media turned into the most terrifying experience of my life. Most people think of Instagram as harmless fun, maybe the occasional awkward DM or accidental story view. But 2 years ago, when I was just 16 and finishing my junior year at Riverside High, I discovered that social media could become a gateway to something far more sinister. It was 11:30 p.m. on a humid June evening. I was sitting at my desk in my bedroom, casually messaging friends while my parents slept soundly down the hall. The house on Maple Street was quiet except for the gentle hum of the air conditioning. That's when my phone buzzed with a notification that would change everything. Instagram message from Diego Unknown 47. The username meant nothing to me. As a teenage guy, I wasn't used to getting random messages from strangers. That was usually something my female friends complained about. My first instinct was to ignore it. Let it sit there. Maybe whoever this was would get bored and move on. But curiosity won. 45 minutes passed before I completely forgot about the message. Then another notification pierced the silence of my room. This Diego person had sent something else. This time, I didn't hesitate. The first image made my blood run cold. It was taken in what looked like an abandoned warehouse, shadows dancing across concrete walls, and there, barely visible in the darkness, was a silhouette of someone's face. The lighting was too poor to make out any features, but I could tell the person had olive-toned skin. The second image was worse. Much worse. It showed the intersection of Pine Avenue and 3rd Street, a location I recognized immediately. It was only 3 blocks from my house. In the grainy, dark photo, I could make out an arm extending into the frame, pointing directly down 3rd Street, pointing toward my neighborhood. My hands trembled as I typed, "Who is this?" The message showed as read instantly, but no response came. Diego had added me as a friend, so I reluctantly accepted, hoping to get some clue about his identity. His profile was practically empty, only 6 followers, 3 posts, and he'd viewed every single one of my recent stories within minutes of posting them. 7 minutes felt like an eternity before the next message arrived. This time, the photo showed the middle of 3rd Street itself, taken from a position that put him just 2 blocks away from my house on Maple Street. "Who is this?" I typed again, more urgently this time. I immediately started texting my closest friends Gary, Jake, and Tyler, convinced this had to be one of them pulling an elaborate prank. Each of them swore they had nothing to do with it, but they all found my panic hilarious. The 4th message arrived as I was still texting with my friends. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened it. Elm Street. My street. The photo was taken from the old street light at the corner, the same one that had flickered for months and cast eerie shadows across the pavement. This wasn't a prank anymore. This was real. I called Gary immediately. At 17, he was built like a linebacker and lived just 4 houses down from me. "Get over here now," I told him, my voice cracking with fear. When Gary arrived, we positioned ourselves on my living room couch, the TV creating a blue glow in the otherwise dark room. We stared at my phone screen, waiting. The anticipation was suffocating. The notification appeared like clockwork. "Diego Unknown 47 sent you a message." Gary laughed nervously. "Dude, screenshot this one. We need evidence." I opened the message with shaking fingers. The image showed my house, the white colonial with the red door on Maple Street, photographed from our front lawn. The angle suggested someone had been standing right by our mailbox. I took the screenshot just as Gary and I both jumped up from the couch and rushed to the front door. Peering through the peephole revealed nothing but empty street. We grabbed our shoes and stepped outside into the cool night air. "You check the front, I'll go around back," I whispered to Gary, though I'm not sure why we were whispering. As I made my way around the side of the house toward our backyard gate, my phone buzzed again. Without thinking, I opened the message immediately. The image showed our back to where the sliding glass door that led from our kitchen to the small patio. The photo was taken from inside our fenced backyard. "Gary!" I shouted, abandoning any pretense of stealth. "Get back here now!" But as I reached for the gate latch, I could hear footsteps fast, desperate footsteps running across our backyard. I threw open the gate just in time to see a dark figure scrambling over the fence at the far end of our property. Gary and I gave chase, but the figure had vanished into the maze of backyards and alleyways that connected our neighborhood. We searched for 20 minutes, but it was like chasing a ghost. Gary stayed with me until nearly 2 a.m., but eventually, exhaustion won out, and he headed home. I tried to sleep, but every shadow in my room seemed to move. Every sound in the house felt threatening. I kept my phone on my nightstand, both hoping and dreading that it would light up with another message. Sleep finally claimed me around 3:30 a.m. When I woke up at 7 a.m., my phone showed 5 new notifications from Diego Unknown 47, all received between 3:45 and 3 a.m. while I slept. It took me 20 minutes to work up the courage to open them. The first 4 images showed different windows of our house: the living room window, my parents' bedroom window, the kitchen window, and the small bathroom window on the side of the house. Each photo was taken from outside, close enough to see through the glass. The 5th image made me physically sick. It was my bedroom window, taken from the tree in our backyard that I used to climb as a kid. The angle showed my bed, my desk, even the clothes I'd thrown on my chair the night before. This person had been watching me sleep. I blocked Diego Unknown 47 immediately and spent the next hour composing a detailed report to Instagram's safety team. Their response came 3 days later, a generic form letter thanking me for my concern and assuring me they take these matters seriously. When I followed up 2 weeks later, I received the exact same response. The most unsettling part wasn't just the stalking itself, but the mystery of who Diego could be. Based on the brief glimpse I'd caught in that first photo and the username, I assumed this person was Latino. But I couldn't think of anyone fitting that description who knew me well enough to have my social media information and home address. Riverside High had a predominantly white student body, and I didn't have any Latino friends or acquaintances who might have harbored some grudge against me. 3 years have passed since that terrifying night on Maple Street, and I still have no answers. Who was Diego Unknown 47? How did he know where I lived? What did he want from me? And most disturbing of all, was he just someone who randomly targeted me? Or had he been watching me for much longer than I realized? I've since moved away for college, but every time I receive a message from an unknown sender, my heart still races. Every time I walk alone at night, I find myself looking over my shoulder. The digital age has made it easier than ever for strangers to invade our privacy, to turn our own technology against us. The scariest part isn't that this happened to me, it's that it could happen to anyone. In a world where our entire lives are documented online, we're all just one message away from discovering that someone has been watching us from the shadows. Sometimes I still wonder if Diego Unknown 47 is out there somewhere, watching someone else's windows, sending someone else photos of their house in the dead of night. The thought keeps me awake more often than I'd like to admit.